Michael Church, Crawl Space Ninja, and I'm here with Trevor from the Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point, North Carolina area. Trevor, thanks for being here.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we got a great question. We had a person out there in YouTube land that basically had a flood in their crawl space, and they got some advice from their best friend, and we're going to go over what that advice is. Stay tuned. So if you're new to Crawl Space Ninja, we talk about everything related to crawl space encapsulation, waterproofing, and indoor air quality. We hope you'll subscribe to our channel, ring that notifications bell, follow us on Facebook, make sure you check out our DIY store and our franchise opportunities. All right, Trevor, so I got this great question. I'm gonna read it to you and have you respond. I had a lot of rainwater gush into my crawl space the other night. My best friend told me I should just let it air out on its own. The wood structure in the crawl space should absorb the rest of the remaining humidity, right?
Well, first of all, it's always good to have a friend's opinion, but let's go ahead and take a look at it more professional. So of course, the wood is going to absorb a lot of that moisture that's in the crawl space, but this is not a good thing. This is not something that we want to happen.
That's correct.
So what we need to do is we need to take a look at the cause first and see what we can do about the actual physical water that's coming in. In a lot of cases, we're looking at two things, physical water and humidity.
Right.
So as far as the physical water, that's an easy fix, something that we can definitely remedy. I would take a look at the outside of the home and see what's going on as far as anything to do with the drainage, downspouts, things of that nature.
Right.
And then I would take a look in the inside. I'd go into the crawl space. Obviously, we're going to look for plumbing leaks. And then at that point, you know, when push comes to shove, what we're going to do is we're going to put a pipe on the interior of the crawl space.
Right.
We're going to go ahead and surround right on top of that footer. We're going to run that into a pump, and that pump's going to be a sealed pump. And again, we're trying to reduce the amount of humidity that's going into the crawl space.
Right, because he mentioned the other night he had a flood. There's a really good chance it's going to flood again, right? So what you're recommending is keeping the flooding from happening.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
Exactly
So about the wood absorbing the moisture, what's the side effect of wood absorbing the moisture?
Actually, a couple things. So one of the things that could happen, obviously, is you can have squeaks in your floors.
Right.
You can have, your floors can actually begin to adjust. When wood gets wet, it expands.
Right.
And so when wood expands, it does become issues. You have even had, you know, simple things to the worst things. And obviously the worst things would be things like mildew, mold, and things like that.
Yeah, so your door jamb might not close because of the floors and all that. Yeah, you can have all that.
And then you get these crazy cracks, you know, and especially after you paint, you look up in there and you see these, you know, diagonal cracks. And then obviously the problems with the doors and everything.
Right, and then eventually it could lead to mold and even wood rot fungus a little further down the line, depending on how long the wood stays wet.
Yes.
Okay, so we got the interior waterproofing done to address the flooding, where we've addressed what could happen if the wood stays wet. So how should he let it air out, or should he do something different to address that moisture that's inside the wood? Because there's no guarantee that airing out the crawl space, especially if he lives in a humid environment, is going to dry that wood out, right? So
that's correct. So wood is actually very porous, and it holds a lot of moisture, and it's even moisture that you can't see. Mm-hmm. So you definitely want to get to a point where we can actually dry that wood out. And what happens is, with moisture, wood expands and contracts. Okay, so that's what we're trying to basically avoid, is that expansion and contraction in the wood. So once wood begins to dry out, which we can do, it'll dry out and begin to shrink. And then that actually can solve a lot of issues with floor systems.
That's
a lot of that squeaking and things like that of that nature can actually be fixed with just drying that wood out. How we would do that is actually pretty simple. You know, you would want to seal those vents up.
Right.
And we would install a dehumidifier. And what we want to do is, because we're also most likely dealing with mold, we're going to have the dehumidifier running for a couple weeks. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. And what we're doing is what's called a long dry. And that long dry is the way that we're going to be able to remediate the mold at that point.
That's right.
After that drying process is done, we can go to the next step.
Right. So we talked about, you know, what to do when it's already wet and ways to prevent it from happening again. Mm-hmm. That dehumidifier is going to stay in place after the wood has been, the mold has been addressed on the wood, if there is any.
Correct.
And then the encapsulation process, along with the water management system, is going to keep that crawl space dry for years to come, right?
That's exactly right. And then at that point, we're protecting everything.
That's great. That's great, Trevor. Good information. So I'm Michael Church, Crawl Space Ninja, here with Trevor. We hope you make it a happy and blessed day, and we'll see you later.